right now, but we'll go ahead and get started. So first of all, my name is Michael Kim with LA Networks. My role at LA Networks is primarily part of the security engineering team and also the networking team. So to start, I'll just say a little bit about us as a company. We were founded in 1997. So the majority of our staff are actually engineers. 70% are actual engineers. So we have generally a pretty small sales department. The core technologies that we manage are security, networking, data center, collaboration, and our managed services department. So a quarter of our engineers are CCIEs. That's mainly what we kind of hang our hat on engineering and providing good service for our customers. We are headquartered in Los Angeles, but we do work on national and global scale. And 90% of our engagements are repeat customers and referrals. So we really try to put a good foot forward, do a good job. So our customers actually end up referring us to other people. They bring us along to customers as they other companies as they move. So that's kind of how we drive our business. All right. So the focus of this presentation and demo today is Cisco Umbrella. This is kind of our agenda for today. So we're going to have a presentation, and after that, I'll just go through a demo of an actual Umbrella deployment. After the presentation, we'll have like a short bio break, just so people can go and use the bathroom, maybe get a drink, maybe even a snack or something like that. Okay, so in the past few years, we've seen the networking environment change a lot with the kind of the uptick in cloud services. More people are moving to the cloud, more applications and data are moving to the cloud. With more cloud services and SaaS services that people are using, we've seen an uptick of more mobile workforce, more people working from home or VPN, or just not in the office in general. And we've seen branch sites move to direct internet access, because if you're mainly using cloud apps, it doesn't make sense to pay for like expensive MPLS or WAN circuit back to your main site. So this is just some data that Cisco's kind of gathered through a survey. What we see is 50% of the workforce is moving to roaming. A roaming user is considered someone who's 20% not in a corporate location. They're either at home or in the office. We'll probably see these numbers go up with kind of the recent situation. 50% of business applications are serviced in the cloud and hosted on the cloud. So they're kind of SaaS applications that you don't use on-prem servers for. 85% of corporate users bypass the VPN connection, and 79% of branch offices are shifting to direct internet access. So the challenge that companies are facing now is one, implementing network security is difficult. There's a lot of equipment that you have to work on. There's a lot of users and just people in general that you have to manage. And staffing is an issue, and taking care of security for people that are offsite and not in the office. And also, most attack vectors for exploits and company-wide attacks are mainly hosted through things like web and email. So things like a web proxy and filtering solutions becomes kind of more important. And more important is also serving kind of the roaming off-network user base. All right, so what is Umbrella? So you may be more familiar with Umbrella as OpenDNS. So Umbrella started off as a DNS provider, Since then, they've kind of moved into web content filtering, which is like URL category filtering, blocks like that. And then they started integrating more security-based features, blocking malware, blocking botnet servers, blocking command control servers. So it was originally started as a DNS provider in 2006. In 2007, they started expanding and adding filtering and blocking features. In 2009, they started kind of becoming more focused towards business-specific offerings. They created the Umbrella Suite and the Investigate feature in 2012 and 2013. I'll go over the Investigate feature a little bit later. And in August 2015, Cisco acquired OpenDNS, and they kind of changed the name of the entire offering to Umbrella. Okay, so kind of as a foundational information, so a lot of you guys may already know this, but so DNS stands for the domain name system. It's the first step in the connection. So all internet traffic is IP address based, but because IP addresses are hard to remember for most people, they have created a kind of a name system. So you don't have to remember the actual IP address. You can use something more familiar to use. And on the back end, the DNS is kind of the infrastructure that lets you translate that into an actual IP address that you can form connections to, use for TCP/IP, UDP, for applications, things like that. So DNS is used by all devices, browsers, and applications. It's port agnostic. It's part of the infrastructure of the internet, so it's vendor agnostic. It's something that's kind of built in for everything that uses the internet. All right. So where does Umbrella fit into kind of the whole infrastructure of security and the internet? So Umbrella, because it does blocking based off of DNS, it's pretty much the first line of defense for all internet traffic. So before any connection is made out, a DNS request goes out to your DNS server, which relays that to a more authoritative DNS server. So Umbrella works on that layer to block those DNS requests before they return anything pointed to an actual malicious site. So if a user is trying to connect to a malicious site, whereas a firewall would maybe block it on an access rule on the firewall itself, or an IPS would maybe block it once you actually try to download a malicious file. Umbrella will block it at the DNS request portion, so it won't even get to the point of actually creating a connection to those malicious IP addresses or servers. So because of that, Umbrella can kind of lower some of your event logging and security events on some of your other devices, just because it blocks all of those events before they get to your other downstream devices. All right, so this is kind of a little bit more information about kind of where DNS fits. So DNS is just built into the foundation of the internet. The diagram on the right kind of shows a little bit about how Umbrella works. So there are kind of subsets of allowed requests and bad requests. Umbrella allows the good requests to come back and blocks the bad requests. And then there's kind of a subset for risky, where it's not really definitively known as good or bad. Those are proxied out to Umbrella's gateway for kind of inspection before it gets to your network. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. All right. So here is some information about Umbrella's global network. So because Umbrella, first and foremost, is a DNS provider, they provide free DNS services for anyone that wants to use them as a DNS forwarder. They get 175 billion requests per day That number may actually be a little bit higher now, just because this slide was kind of created some time ago. They have 90 million daily active users, 15,000 enterprise customers, and they operate in 160 plus countries worldwide. So the reason kind of this information is important for Umbrella is because of the modeling systems that they use, and the machine learning algorithms that they use. Part of the benefit of using Umbrella is that they have all of this data to use to generate their models for what's good and what's bad. So as kind of more applications and services kind of go to like a machine learning model, especially for security, kind of one of the big bottlenecks for that is you need to have the information to actually train your systems, to make sure you're modeling things correctly. So kind of the fact that Umbrella started off as a DNS provider first just means that they're getting a lot more information than maybe some other machine learning based security products. And that helps them to, one, react faster to malicious events, and also to have more accurate modeling. All right. So so far we've kind of talked mostly about DNS as the kind of security protocol that Umbrella uses to block events. They also do use kind of IP layer and file inspection. So the kind of the top three portions of the pyramid here, that kind of points to how they do IP layer protection. So they do have the Umbrella and Talos Security Group as kind of information feeders into their own systems. So they get information from Talos for new malicious domains, any new malware that they see hitting specific servers. So they get all of that information. They also do their own kind of information ingestion and their own modeling to find new malicious sites, while also kind of using the more common other kind of IP lists that people make available to kind of all of the different security products. And they use that to build IP layer defense and also DNS HTTP layer defense. With the kind of the HTTP portion also, they do also have antivirus built in through their file inspection policies, and it's also tied into the advanced malware protection that Cisco provides to help block malicious files for people using Umbrella. All right, so this is a little bit more information about how Cisco Umbrella determines good and bad domains. So they get the Cisco Talos feed of malicious domains. They have their own Cisco threat file-based intelligence that's kind of that'd be the threat record, which the sandboxing is analyzing all of those and then determining malicious IP addresses, domains from all of that information. And then also using DNS data that Umbrella receives from customers and also non-customers, and using those as their for their modeling to determine kind of good sites, bad sites, risky sites, and also proactively predicting which sites will probably be bad. The portion at the bottom is the modeling. So the Umbrella has a few different models they use to determine what's malicious and what's not non-malicious. I'll go over those in a few later slides. There's some probably other algorithms that they use that they don't make publicly available, but they give some information about what they look for when they're trying to determine whether or not a site is good or bad. Okay, this is a kind of a newer feature in Umbrella. So because Umbrella is getting all of that DNS information, it's able to to see one of kind of a big issue that people are seeing nowadays, which is shadow IT. So these are generally apps that people are running in your corporate network that you might not be aware of. So maybe you guys have your internal file system or SharePoint, but people are using their own Dropbox or OneDrive. So because Umbrella is seeing all of those DNS requests coming in, they've created a dashboard where you can kind of see all of the IT-related apps that people are using that you might not be aware of. So because you can't monitor everyone all the time, and people generally find ways around security policies, this is a way for you to gain more insight and visibility into what your users are doing. All right. So these are the statistical models that Umbrella uses to determine what's good and what's bad, and to predict what domains may be good and what domains may be bad. So the first model to use is guilt by inference. This generally means that they can infer just based off of domains that get maybe looked up at the same time as guilty domains. They can find connections between malicious sites and non-malicious sites, or malicious sites and sites that might be malicious but aren't known yet, and use that as a predictive model to determine what site is bad but hasn't been labeled as bad as in all of the other kind of IP lists. Guilt by association. That model looks at where server IPs are coming from, who they're associated with, what servers they may be connected to, and using that, it can correlate kind of new servers and bad servers and rank them all as malicious if they can. Patterns of guilt. This is looking at patterns that match kind of known malware. So if they see DNS spiking in a certain way, they can kind of chart that out and use that to find malicious domains before they actually get to the point where they start attacking people. And I'll go over kind of all of these in a few of these upcoming slides. All right, so this is an example of the co-occurrence model for Umbrella. So a user goes to x.com, and that's a known malicious domain. Generally, when malware hits, it hits different domains at around the same time, using like a kind of during a specific time frame. So if they see a malicious domain being looked up along with other domains that are possibly malicious, it uses that as part of its security modeling and ranking. And once it hits a certain threshold, it can determine that those other possibly malicious domains are actually malicious domains. So patterns of guilt. So on a timescale, DNS requests for a specific domain, they have different malware types modeled, and they can see how that malware acts as it actually gears up to launch an attack. So for this example, they're using an exploit kit, and they have a model of how those DNS requests come in for that exploit kit. So if they see a domain y.com kind of matching their existing models for certain types of malware, they can know that, oh, this malware is being used for some sort of exploit or attack, and they can predictively set that malware, that site as malicious, and block users from being able to browse to it in Umbrella before it actually gets to the point of launching an actual exploit. And then predictive IP space monitoring. This is their guilt by association model. So from here, they can connect domains to certain servers. Generally, malicious servers work in kind of similar IP address blocks. It lets kind of bad actors switch to new servers quickly, just because they'll control usually that block of IP. So if they find that one IP gets blocked, they can just change the domain name to a different IP address. So Umbrella looks at that information, determines if the IP block is related or owned by similar bad actors, and they can predictably just do blocks for the entire uh, IP block without each individual IP address actually being flagged as malicious. And all these models kind of work together to come up with a security risk score for everyone, and that's kind of what overall determines how Umbrella decides whether or not to block sites. All right. So these are the features of Umbrella. So they protect you on your network or off your network. There's a few different deployments that allow that to happen. For off network, people will install either a roaming client, or for users that use Cisco AnyConnect, there is a plugin that can get applied to your existing AnyConnect connection, and it adds a Umbrella connector that does DNS script and actually encrypts your DNS traffic to the Umbrella cloud. It stops connections based on 80 plus content categories. Those are your URL categories, so things like adult sites, gambling sites, gaming sites, social media sites. Those are part of its URL filtering. AD group membership integration. So Umbrella has an appliance or a connector or service that actually gets deployed out to your domain controllers. So what that does is it gives you granular information about what user on what device is going where. So it helps with investigation. So if you see a block event or a security event in Umbrella, it'll tell you what user and what computer was actually trying to make that request. So you can pretty much go down to that specific user and triage, instead of having to maybe look through your firewall logs and your Windows logs to try to correlate an IP address to the end user. Proxy risky traffic and IP layer enforcement. Those are both with the roaming client integration. What that does is for sites like Google Docs or kind of file repository sites, those can't be blocked natively, even by like things like your firewall, just because there are non-malicious files, safe files hosted on those sites, but there are also malicious files and malicious items on those sites. So generally, that type of traffic can't be blocked. So what Umbrella does for those is it'll actually proxy that traffic over to its cloud gateway. And that cloud gateway will act as a proxy, inspecting that traffic before it gets to your end user. And it can actually do file inspection for any files that they're also trying to download through that risky traffic. IP layer enforcement, that also works through the roaming client. So if an application or a virus is trying to talk but it's not using DNS, which is rare, but it does happen, the roaming client will actually use IP layer address enforcement and will block known malicious IP addresses. Reporting is all kind of set in the dashboard. You can see just general activity searches, see what kind of categories of sites users are going to. You can see blocks, what sites have been blocked, security events, if someone would try to go to a malware site, if they tried to download a malicious file, things like that. There's also reporting through Investigate, where if your security analyst wants to pivot from Umbrella into kind of just getting more information about that malicious site in general, just for maybe they want to write a report or just get more insight into the specific site that maybe a user is trying to go to, the Investigate UI can let you pivot to get more information from the Investigate dashboard. Log retention via Amazon S3. So Cisco Umbrella has its own database where it stores your log information and report information, but you can also offload that to a Cisco managed Amazon S3 bucket, or if you have a not personal, you have an enterprise S3 bucket, you can also pass those logs over to those S3 buckets. So the reason some people might do that is if they have a SIM that they have accessing Amazon S3, that would be able to also gather the umbrella logs to correlate those security events. That's third-party device integrations. That's just a list of devices that Umbrella can integrate with. Threat enforcement integrations, those are just additional integrations that Umbrella has. The multi-organizational console, for some people that maybe manage multiple domains that have maybe different Active Directory domains, maybe they just have different policies and they want to just keep them separate from each other, you can set up multiple organizations that you access through the same dashboard. Umbrella Investigate, I talked a little about that. I'll go over kind of a little bit more of the features under the demo portion. The Cloud Application Discovery and Control, that's the application and shadow IT discovery that I talked about earlier. Okay, so this is information about the current packages and licensing. DNS Security Essentials, this is mainly for the smaller companies. If you lose some features, like you don't have access to the Investigate, or the proxy or AD integration, it's good for things like URL filtering and just kind of basic blocking for smaller companies. Dns Security Advantage, this is for mid-size and up companies. It has the proxy and AD integration, so you can see user information and proxy risky traffic, and it also gives you access to that Umbrella Investigate dashboard. The Secure Internet Gateway, this is a little bit different from the other Cisco Umbrella offerings. The Secure Internet Gateway is set up as a kind of a proxy for all of your web traffic. It's a cloud-based kind of firewall and internet gateway. It has some CASB functionality. It's generally used for you to proxy your web traffic either through pack files, internet proxies, or through L12 VPN tunnel to a cloud gateway. So it's a little bit different from the other packages where it actually sends all of your web traffic to the cloud for inspection, while the other offerings uses Umbrella to allow DNS requests to come in, and also maybe proxy just risky traffic. Okay. All right. So deployment types. So Cisco Umbrella, as it joined with Cisco, they have a few different deployment types depending on the level of granularity you want in your reporting, and also if you want to try to integrate with some of your existing networking devices. So you can have it set up with your kind of your current DNS DHCP servers, or you can also have it kind of proxied or relayed through some of your routers, and also through the AnyConnect roaming module, or for people on mobile devices like iPhones and Androids, there are actual applications that you can deploy to those mobile devices that will do the DNS inspection, just like you would do like an end user computer or laptop. All right, so I'm just going to go over kind of the different deployment models that you can have for Umbrella. So the simplest way to just, if you just want to get everything set up like really quickly, just have all of the protections that Umbrella provides, but you don't need maybe the specific information about what users are going where. You can actually just configure your public IP address on the Umbrella Cloud dashboard, and then just change your forwarder on your internal DNS server to point to OpenDNS's public DNS servers. So what that does is the Umbrella Cloud, as it sees DNS requests come in from your public IP address, it knows what policies to apply to that traffic. So the one drawback with this is one, you don't get the reporting function. Everything will just show up as your public IP address. So even though the traffic is still getting blocked, if it's malicious or if it doesn't, if it's failing some URL categories that you have blocking, you won't be able to tell who was trying to go to those sites, just because everything will just show up as your public IP address. The other issue with that is you won't be able to set up granular policies. So with the AD integration, that lets you actually create policies based off of AD groups. You can set up policies based off of roaming computers. You can set up policies for specific users. But with this deployment, you just pretty much set up one policy that applies to all of your internal devices. Okay. So this is kind of the second deployment type. It's a little bit more in depth. So for this deployment, you will actually deploy 2 virtual appliances per location. These are kind of small, lightweight servers that operate in your environment. And what you do is you reconfigure DHCP to send DNS requests to those virtual appliances. So those virtual appliances tie into your Umbrella Cloud automatically. And what you get from there is you get internal IP address information for everyone making requests. So now in your reporting function, you see the private IP addresses, what it's trying to hit, and then blocks, and then you'll see all the information related to that. So it gives you more information, but you won't be able to see end user information. Which brings up to the next deployment type, which is with the Umbrella virtual appliances deployed internally and with a domain controller and domain user setup so that the virtual appliances can query for AD usernames and correlate those to the internal IP address. So what this allows you to do is create policies based off of AD groups or AD users. So for example, if you have a CEO and the CEO is on his laptop and you don't want to do any blocking for him, you can set up specific policies just for your CEO. If you have an IT group that maybe goes to specific sites, or maybe you have the PR department who has to go to social media, but your other users shouldn't, you can set up specific policies for those different groups. In the reporting in the Umbrella Cloud, that will also show you AD user information, and you can dive into different categories for what that user is going to. If that person has any blocks or attempts to go to malicious sites, it'll give you more information that will be useful for your security analysts to investigate and then triage security events. All right. So this is just a kind of a very quick overview for the deployment steps. Depending on the different deployment, it's a little bit different, but the first thing everyone will need to do is just set up your service in the cloud. This will include kind of adding in your public IP address. If you're going to be using kind of the virtual appliance, you'll also have to enter in your internal domains. If you plan to deploy virtual appliances, all of those downloadable images, the service, the configuration scripts, those are all downloadable from the Umbrella dashboard. If you plan to get granular with your AD user group identities and policies, you'll set that up next. If you plan to use SSL decryption, with the intelligent proxy. From the cloud, you can download a Umbrella root certificate that will allow the excuse me, the roaming client to actually do SSL decryption for traffic going out and do inspection that way. The mobile and Apple iOS users, those deployments are a little bit different. They do require kind of an MDM to be able to kind of push um, the Umbrella applications to those Android and iPhone devices. There's more documentation information on the web for that. They'll give you kind of a list of tested MDM solutions that work with Android and Apple iPhones. All right, so that's the end of the presentation portion. So next, we'll be going into the demo. But before that, I'll give everyone a 10-minute bio break, just to get people a chance to get up, spread their legs, maybe get some water, get a snack, or use the bathroom. So right now it is 12:09. So we will meet back at 12, let's just say 12:20, and get to the demo portion. All right, so I'll see everyone back at 12:20.